So this is Suzanne Gabris. She is an occupational therapist. She's been practicing for more years than I will disclose for her. And so her topics throughout her doctoral program have been really focused on autism and trauma. And she's done a little bit of work with higher education, a bunch of different things. So she's had some fun in this design your own doctorate. And she is a student who also completed our bridge. So she is doing phenomenal work, and we're going to turn it over to her to hear more about early childhood and assistive technology and play. Take it over.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here tonight and talk to you guys about my experiences with assistive technology in the early childhood setting and what I chose to research as part of my doctorate capstone experience. First of all, I wanted to just talk about why assistive technology and play and why I was curious about looking at the link between those two. We know that there's quite a bit of research out there on play, and we know that there's research on assistive technology and tools and techniques and approaches that are being used. Um, I've seen the push, and I think a lot of us can probably relate to the push for pre-academics, even in early childhood, wanting kindergartners to be able to write their name and sit at desks and really focus on academics for an extended period of time. And so I wanted to focus on that piece of play. I also am seeing and have seen for the past, I'd say 5 years, a strong uptick in numbers of children coming to our early childhood education center that have complex bodies, complex medical needs. So as that number goes up, so is the need for different assistive technology supports and strategies. And then finally, I really was curious if assistive technology supports are going unutilized, if OTs are using them, if they're overwhelmed by them, how they're interacting with teachers when they're utilizing them. So that's kind of what sparked my research. When I dove into the literature, I really tried to focus on a few different areas. So I looked at the role of play in general on development, the basic barriers that are affecting kids with disabilities, play as an occupational role. So taking that perspective of what is most important to the child and how do we tease out therapeutic play, play for goal attainment, and play for play's sake, as well as just looking at the impact of IDEA, and then finally the whole role that assistive technology can play in supporting kids with disabilities. First, in the literature, as far as the role of impact of play on development, we can look to our AUBTA quote and how we define play as activities that are intrinsically motivated, that are internally controlled by children, and they're freely chosen. So when we think about kids with disabilities, in particular young kids with disabilities, we know that there are lots of roadblocks to being able to do those things independently. Also, finding research stating that we know play is more than fun, that play needs to be challenging. It often doesn't have an end. There is a shift in learning that happens in play that is self-driven as a child learns and becomes more curious in new areas. And overall, play promotes learning and supports self-regulation, problem solving, communication, social skills, and knowledge in all areas. Literature review also talked about, and I found a lot of information talking about those barriers. So we know that these are coming from impairment, so areas of limitation. So we're talking about not being able to access standard toys, coming across such challenges based on communication, not just motor abilities, and also being able to independently access things in the environment, not just connect with toys. Found research showing that the limitations on play can greatly impact not just their participation, but our view as OTs is that occupational role. And also learned that there are 3 million children in the United States that have what has been newly categorized as children with medical complexity. And really kind of staggering is that that category of children is rising 5% or is growing by 5% every year. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. That category of children, we are seeing an uptick um, a rate that is higher than the general child population. And just when you think about that category of child, what we're learning and what we need to consider and remember is that they have even less time for play. So we need to be mindful and really think of those children when we're considering play. When I looked at literature and studies that are out there on the occupational role of play, we definitely have definitions in our field about play being an established domain. Um, you can see where we've fallen away from that during times and we're coming back to it. But there are some nice recent studies that show the impact and social growth, motor growth, natural curiosity, all being supported by natural play. Then I just included the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was updated in 2004 to add assistive technology, and it requires public schools to consider AT for every child who has an IEP. So everyone needs to be discussing it. Schools can no longer just say, oh, that kid doesn't need it. He's doing fine. It needs to be discussed. And so I kind of wanted to raise some awareness there. Finally, in my literature review, sorry about that. I looked at assistive technology in play. What does that entail? So I kind of broke that down into a few areas too. So we can consider toy adaptations and environmental access. So those are your switches, adaptive toys, modifying your environment so that kids can sit, access stand, get to what they need to or the people they need to. But it also can include creative expression. And I love the study that I found talking about kids with cerebral palsy who really benefited and showed an increase in affective expression and symbolic play when they were given access to like alternative dress up opportunities in preschool and then different seating options. So the research is out there showing that it makes a difference. I also looked at communication. I think it's pretty apparent that there's a lot of AAC out there happening. There are plenty of studies talking about the benefits of AAC. And so I included that. And then just autonomy and skill development, there's plenty of research on there. The big component is that no one really is putting all of these things together, considering the communication aspect, the ability to move around the environment, independently accessing those toys to collectively look at play as an occupation. And what does that look like with assistive technology? Everybody's kind of broken things up into those individual components. So I received approval from Elizabethtown's IRB board to conduct a mixed methods survey study. I created a pilot survey study and I tested it with 2 OTs, got some feedback, realized I wasn't getting information that I really needed, made some updates, and had a final copy. I used convenient sampling. I initially distributed it to 12 occupational therapists known to me. And then I used snowball sampling, asking them to go to their professional affiliations, other people they know. I also posted on a few private social media pages, and I listed on AOTA's survey request board. I also distributed my teacher survey to teachers known to me and asked that they do the same. I ended up closing my survey. I had a total of 43 participants. I ended up with 30 OTs who participated and 13 teachers. I had multiple choice questions, some Likert scale questions, and several open-ended questions so that I could gain some of that rich, descriptive, qualitative data to give me some insight into what things looked like and what play looks like that's already happening in early childhood settings. So here's what things looked like. Um, I will say that I was disappointed that I didn't have more teacher surveys. I can kind of talk about that in discussions, but I'm really going to focus on the OT perspectives. All of the teacher information is included as well. But you can see that they really did mirror each other. Um, Again, my teacher sample was quite small, but my in the OT sample, in the teacher sample, they both chose adaptive toys, environmental modifications, and AAC as being their top tools that they use when they're trying to promote play. Teachers rank them in a little different order than OTs. Um, I saw throughout my survey that teachers leaned heavily on the AAC when they're thinking about play, less so from the OTs, but they did end up both being the top three tools that were selected. When I looked at barriers and I asked about things that are keeping people from using assistive technology to support play, what I found was that the OTs said lack of time to trial it, lack of funding, and lack of time to collaborate. Teachers said time to trial, time to collaborate, and then they also cited a lack of training that they had received. Something interesting that I did find through the quantitative data was that I had 67% of my OTs reported that they have what they need to use assistive technology to support play for play's sake. And then 80% of them said that they're very confident in doing so. But I only had 47% say that they are actively using that technology. Also, in the barriers, they cited funding as their second, you know, it was the second most popular answer on barriers. So it kind of left me wondering, do you not have the tech you need, or you're saying you do? So I'm not sure if it was a lack of funding overall that could also contribute to training. Funding could also be considered lack of time, lack of professional development to connect with others. So that left a little unanswered question for me. I did also take two variables from the occupational therapist, and I looked at um, years of experience and their reported use of assistive technology for play. What I found was that 86% of the therapists who said that they consistently or most of the time use AT for play have been practicing over 10 years. And 71% of therapists that had 10 years or less experience cited sometimes, rarely, or never. Okay, when it comes to the qualitative data, I asked a couple open-ended questions. So I looked at, I wanted people to tell me what their observations are when AT is in place. And so I got a lot of really good examples of, and themes that we ended up identifying were increased independence during play, an increase in foundational skills and social emotional development and communication. So here are a couple of quotes and just some information on what we considered when we looked at that. Let's see, I missed one, sorry. Independence, the percentages were pretty high on both groups. They really looked at kids wanting to be able to make their own choices. When we were talking about social emotional development, there were several comments that were talking about building connection, just staying engaged. And I know that for a lot of learners that I'm supporting, that is a skill that we need to work on. And a lot of times people want to get to the IEP goals and instead of working on the connection piece. And so I thought that was really important and interesting. Increased communication also, like I said, it was higher in the teacher responses than the OT descriptions, excuse me. Also, some other themes that we saw that we included in both of them were that there were some occupational therapists who 20% of the responses included that AT does not affect play or is not purposeful for play or it is negatively affecting. And someone said it can vary drastically. A lot of times it's just set up with the end goal in mind. And I think that's kind of what I was expecting to see more of. I also thought that I might get that from teachers, but I think my low sample size and reaching out to teachers that I know and that I have been supporting with assistive technology may have affected that information. This other qualitative data question that I asked was, what does collaboration look like for you when you are integrating assistive technology into play? So OTs said that they really saw they felt very passionately about having time to collaborate. They talked about the importance of co-treating and being in the classroom. They did mention or they did mention types of technology that they use, but for teachers, that was stronger. They really just they hit on training that they really wish they had more of it, and then they kind of named the things that they use. They did less descriptive explaining of what their collaboration looks like. So, as far as discussions and implications for my study, I feel like we can take this information and know that we have occupational therapists and seasoned occupational therapists who are comfortable using assistive technology for play. And often they're saying that they have what they need to do so. So it kind of leaves me wondering where the gap is. So I feel like there's an opportunity to move forward with that. I also think that it was really nice to get those descriptive qualitative answers that talk about that social emotional connection. A lot of times we have professionals in education that are not yet focused, like Bridget talked about, on making the connection and are kind of worried about compliance. And I think this was some really good information saying that people are seeing this, teachers are seeing the social emotional connection, and OTs are definitely seeing it. So if we want to continue laying that foundation for really early learners, for our learners who can't move their body independently, if we want to foster that safety and keep them from functioning out of fight or flight because they don't yet feel safe being in their first educational experience away from mom, I think that giving chances for kids to control their play and keeping things open-ended, we've got some nice data here showing us that those things do happen. And then finally, I think it's interesting too that the novice versus compared to experienced therapists, I thought that it might show that newer or younger therapists were more interested in the technology. I'm not overly surprised that it was more seasoned therapists that are comfortable with it. I think that assistive tech, I know it was for me, is often something you move into after you have a little bit more of your career established. And so, again, I wasn't overly shocked by that, but I do think that it gives us room to learn and grow with how we provide some professional development or education opportunities. Lastly, I just like this. If we want to foster that connection over compliance and establish the strong foundation, school staff must first meet the social emotional needs of these children, allowing them to feel safe when being away from their caregivers. Opportunities for social development, motor growth, curiosity, and all of those approaches to learning are supported by play. And I think that we can stay committed, and we have a little more data now to support that we can use these tools not only to work on skills, but to work on play and foster the whole child's growth. Um, I would love to extend an extra thank you to my parents who were lifelong educators and instilled and encouraged me to continue to grow my education. Um, my husband and kids who have hung through with me through all of this and supported me the entire way. I had a colleague, Lauren Montgomery, who helped me do the thematic analysis to make sure that things were valid and that I wasn't missing any pieces. Multiple colleagues who've just cheered me on, and I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Hamble for also calming my nerves and taking my big giant idea, helping me focus a little bit, and maybe help me catch a bug for some research. So we'll see where it goes.
Thank you,
Are there any,
Suzanne.
are
We'll look
there,
for questions. Anyone have any questions? You're getting an awesome in there. See
well,
if there's any
thank
more.
you. I didn't get to read the chat.
I I don't know what just hmm.
Oh,
Oh,
did
it's a
I
great job.
disappear?
Love how it came together. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, my screen looks funny
Oh, and
now.
I should extend a giant thank you. That is my friend and colleague, Dr. Heather Roberts out of Texas Women's University, who definitely helped me pursue this and gave me lots of encouragement. Forever grateful.
All right. And we do have a question from Lucy. I'm going to unmute her.
Hi,
Lucy,
Lucy.
there you go.
Hi, Suzanne. I want to say I just loved your presentation and it was really fascinating. And I do had a question as far as from your experience from the early play situations with these kids with the AC devices. In your experience, how often do you see these devices follow those children into the higher grades? I know that sometimes we start going to more and more academic, but some of those grades still have like a fun Friday or a playtime or indoor recess. Do you ever see those AC devices carry over into those situations?
I could speak from my preschool, and we try to encourage our teachers to have it all the time. I mean, I have ginormous Ziploc bags that I put them in when they're going to the water table. I tell them to take it outside. I mean, we've replaced a lot of screens, but we've also got some screen protectors and grids on there too now to help protect. Yeah, and ideally, and I've learned so much from SLPs. But it's really nice when they realize that the motor component is so important. And when you can get people on board and say, you look at this, I'm not trying to take over your job with AAC, but have you thought about the motor demand? No, I didn't. Have you thought about posture? No, I didn't. Have you thought about vision? No, I haven't. Um, have you thought about not asking them a question with their device, but just talk silly words? I'm putting on yum and yuck and gross instead of colors and numbers and nouns. We're putting on silly words. So I've got buy-in now. It's taken a while, but and then I'm trying to get them to use it in every location. And then I do have a lot of kids that we put on AAC young and then don't need it by the time they go to kindergarten. And I love explaining it to people or people on my team who say, well, he's kind of talking or I can understand him. And I say, well, there's a step stool there. So there are times that he can't access his verbal expression. So let's give him something else. And it's kind of that idea that it's a step stool. It's not going to take the place. And the quicker that I can get parents and teachers to see that, usually the quicker they don't need it. Because as soon as they can speak, that's faster than using the AAC device. So then they ditch it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, with that, I'm going to stop the recording for this one. So before I do that, congratulations, Suzanne, almost Dr. Gabris. We got a week to go yet to finish paper, but you're so
Thank
close, and
you.
I'm so proud of all the work and the very hard things that you've done. And yes, when she says she had a big idea, she's not kidding. She started out with probably the biggest one I've ever heard, and we worked it to a place where it was something that would be very meaningful and enable her to move forward. So congratulations, you did a nice job. And
Thank
I'm
you.
going to stop.